So before we hop into this video today, guys, I want everyone to grab their left hand, put it to their right shoulder, pull it down, buckle yourself in, because this one's going to be a long one. Make sure to belt that like button, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, as this video did take a little while to put together, and I do appreciate everyone's love and support. And in saying that, let's hop into the video. Yo, what is going on, homies? It's your boy Stumped, back for another OPTC video, and in today's video, we are taking a look at the limited rare recruits that are out on OPTC Global, and with one exception of OPTC JP. So with JP, they are only really like one limited rare recruit ahead of us. So I decided that we may as well chuck him in, and we're going to chat about him today as well. So before we start, obviously I want to give a huge shout out to OPTC tier list and the OPTC database for images provided. So links to both of those are in the description below. If you guys want to make your own tier lists, or if you need to be like making teams and looking for units, the OPTC database is the easiest place to do that. So starting at the bottom down here, we have the E tier. We've got Kizaru, Kiji, the Rogues, and Law. Basically, these units have never been useful ever. I don't think I've used them once. I have all of them, and I don't even think I've leveled up Kizaru. I think I've pulled him twice, and I've just never used him. Onto the A tier now. We have Frankie, Killer, Fisher Tiger, Kid, and Jinbei. Now, these guys were usable once upon a time, but nowadays they've just been straight up replaced with better units. So, Kid does 2 times attack to strikers, which no one runs strikers. You've got Jinbei, who's a 2.5 times chain lock, as well as matching orbs. He was fairly decent back in the day for like powerhouse teams, but honestly, nowadays he's just replaced. Fisher Tiger is a 1.75 times attack booster for powerhouse units for 3 turns. When he first came out, that was kind of cool, but again, just no one ever uses that. And Frankie, I think he does something to do with shooters. I'm pretty sure he does something to do with shooters, but again, just another unit that I've literally never used. In the D tier, we have Gecko Moria, Ben Beckman, and Brindy World. Now, these guys had seen play once upon a time, but nowadays are they've just fallen off drastically. The thing about limited rare recruits, besides the sort of top S tier, all of them are actually very replaceable with better rare recruits that are going around. So we'll talk about that when we get up there. So Gecko Moria does a 3 times chain lock for 1 turn, and if the enemy is delayed, he just does 1,000,000 damage to everyone. So he came out around when V1 Katakuri came out, and he was very good for V1 Katakuri teams, but again, like he just never has been that essential or that great. Ben Beckman is a 1.5 times conditional boost to delayed enemies and delays enemies himself. I think he does adjacent orbs as well, but fairly good. But the downside is it's delaying, and delaying has never really been like a massive sort of conditional you want to be going for, as most enemies are immune to delay. Finally, we have Brindy World. Brindy World's just like big damage, nothing really special there. Besides like the content that came out around the time of these guys' release, like you never really saw too much play with these guys. Into the C tier now, we have Usopp and Dofi. Now, this Usopp is fairly good. Downside is he's a shooter booster. So he makes basically every color matching for shooters, and he does something to do with orb changing. And then I think he does like a conditional. But again, like it's just the thing with shooters are like no one's using them. And that goes for Dofi as well. This Dofi is very, very good, don't get me wrong. But he's a 2 times orb booster for shooter characters. So if you guys run shooters, let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys like to run these units, please let me know. But I just feel like there's lots of other really good shooter characters that just do what they do, but better. So, for example, V3 Sabo, the Dex Sabo. He basically does a 2.25 times orb boost, as well as a 3 times chain lock. So, that's right, the Usopp does a chain boost, 0.75. So, like, literally just with that one Dex Sabo, you can replace both of these units on a team and not have to worry about that. Next, we have Horty. Horty was really interesting. He's still fairly decent. He is a 2.25 times orb booster for powerhouse units, as long as your captain has like a strength dex or quick orb or something like that. Basically, he was built around 6+ V2 Jinbei. So he was like an amazing sub for Jinbei teams, but like when Jinbei first came out, like no one was using Jinbei. That was the thing, right? So Horty is fairly decent, and if you can get him to proc, his 2.25 times orb boost is very, very strong. The downside is, if you're not running Jinbei, you basically don't have those orbs matching. And without those orbs matching, there's really no point to that orb boost. The final 2 units on the C tier are a little bit interesting. We have Kobe and we have Akainu. Now, Akainu is a 2 times orb booster to driven units, which is very, very strong. And Kobe is actually a 2 times attack booster to driven units, which is very, very strong as well. The downside is their driven boosters. That is the big issue with like all of these units that you can kind of see on this category here. Besides maybe like Fisher Tiger and Holdy, I guess. They all boost things that you just don't tend to run that often, like driven boosters, shooter boosters, delay conditionals, delay mechanics, all of that sort of stuff. No one really uses too much. So unfortunately, these units kind of hit the mark, like missed the mark a little bit. But in saying that as well, they are fairly old and they have been out for a little while. The thing with Kobe is though, Kobe had a really interesting mechanic where he completely removes bind from one of your crewmates, which is fairly good. But with the release of the World Mission Ace and Sabo, like the Dead Ace, the one with like he's like dying in Luffy's arms, and then there's like the Sabo where he's like got Ace's hat and he's putting it on his grave. You can have a free-to-play like unit that literally does what that Kobe does. So the Kobe was good once upon a time, but nowadays just kind of misses the mark. So let's talk about the units that are actually like usable nowadays. So we're going to move up to the B tier here. So in the B tier, we have Caesar Clown, we have Marco, we have Basil Hawkins, we have Leo, and we have Carrot. So these units are still usable, I guess is the best way to put it. They have been replaced by a lot of units, but if you still have these guys and you don't have the replacements, you can easily still find uses for these guys on the team. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to the database now, and we're going to have a talk about some of these units. So the first unit we're going to talk about in the B tier is the Warrior Leo, the Courageous Dwarf. So he's a striker powerhouse unit, and he's also an int type, which is very, very good. The powerhouse class is still exceptional, and the int typing is very, very strong. His captain ability boosts, you know what, captain, who cares? No one's running this guy as a captain. His sailor ability, if the character has an int orb and hits a perfect, he will keep that int orb in the next turn, and he makes psi orbs beneficial for himself. His special goes down to 13 turns with limit break, and he will reduce paralysis by 3 turns. Random non-matching orbs, including block orbs, adds 65 times his attack as additional typeless damage for 1 turn, and if the captain is a striker character, reduces the percent damage reduction by 3 turns. So Leo has quite a good little bit of utility, especially if you do have a striker captain. You don't necessarily need to be running a striker team, but like if you have that secondary striker tag, you can proc his full special, getting the percent, like the rainbow shield reduction as well as the paralysis. The downside to Leo is it is only 3 turns. Nowadays 3 turns is a little bit lacking, but the typeless damage for 1 turn is quite nice. The randomizing matching orb, non-matching orbs can see a little bit of play, especially because it randomizes block orb, but unfortunately it doesn't make them matching, which kind of means that it sort of misses the mark there. So look, Leo, once upon a time Leo was very, very good. And look, he can still be usable, but nowadays just no one has strikers. Like, let's be real, like ideally you want to put this guy on a striker team or have a captain that is strikers, and there's just not a lot of them out there. So let's move on to the next unit now. Let's have a look at our girl Carrot. Carrot Adventures in the Bedroom. That is an interesting name. Very interesting name. So she's a free spirit fighter. She's also a psi type, which is very, very good. She completely resists paralysis on herself and makes psi orbs beneficial to free spirit characters as a sailor. So that is very, very good. Making psi orbs beneficial to free spirit units. Excellent, excellent sub potential. Her special goes down to 13 turns with limit break, and she's going to reduce enemies' threshold damage reduction and percent damage reduction by 3 turns. She reduces bind by 5 and changes bomb, G, empty, and badly matching orbs into matching. And if your captain is a free spirit, she's going to boost the attack against delayed enemies by 2 times for 1 turn. So her special is fairly decent. Honestly, it's not terrible, and it can see some play. Removing threshold and damage reduction is very, very good. The downside to her is she only does 3 turns. Again, very similar to Leo. 3 turns sort of just doesn't cut it too much these days, as most content has like 5 turns of these sort of debuffs. But she does remove bind by 5 turns, which is fairly good, having those 2 sort of defensive utilities and the bind utility. Honestly, I much preferred if she would have had like the other defense, like defense up instead of the bind, even if it was only 3 turns. Just having all 3 of them in one unit just makes them really, really usable. Changing the bomb, G, and empty and badly matching orbs into matching orbs is quite nice, but the whole 2 times against delayed enemies, you're not really going to see too much play with that. Having a free spirit captain is very, very easy, but you then have to bring someone else to do the delay, which kind of makes it her a little bit hard to use, I guess. She does have barrier pen on her limit break as well as pinch healing, which is very, very good. Both of those limit breaks are very, very strong. So Look, Carrot, I recently pulled on the Alvita Sugo Fest, and I still haven't really used her, but I can see people actually still running this unit, and for very niche pieces of content, she could be very, very handy. Moving on to the next unit now, we're going to talk about Marco. Marco the Phoenix, Paramount Wars, Blue Flames. This guy is a powerhouse fighter and a strength unit. He has 2 Sailor abilities that boost the attack of powerhouse characters by 75 and makes strength orbs beneficial to powerhouse characters. Very, very good Sailor abilities. Any Sailor that makes an orb matching for like that class is always going to be up there as one of the units you want to run on the team. Marco's special is very interesting though. He reduces your crew's HP to 1, so he sets your HP to 1, but then boosts the color affinity of powerhouse characters by 2 times for 1 turn and removes blindness, poison, recovery down, and no healing duration completely. So that last part where he's completely removing the remove sound effects, poison, recovery down, and healing, no healing, is very, very strong. The downside is you only have 1 HP. Reducing yourself to 1 HP can be very, very risky, but it can also work in your favor. It can remove stuff like that new mechanic stun. Taking damage is actually going to remove that from your sailors, provided he's not one of the ones that actually gets stunned. And getting 2 times color affinity to powerhouses is very, very useful. The downside is its color affinity boost. If this was like a 2 times attack boost, or a 2 times orb boost, or something like that, this character would see a lot more play. Now, don't get me wrong, he is still very, very good, but he is only sort of specific to very niche pieces of content. He has critical hit and enrage as his limit break abilities, and his cooldown goes to 13 turns with limit break as well. So, look, Marco's definitely not bad. It's more just the fact that color affinity can sort of backfire on you, and if you're not running like a full colored team, especially with super types nowadays, it's more the fact that it's hit or miss. If it was, say, 2 times color affinity to strength units, this guy would just see way more play, But look, he is a powerhouse booster. At the end of the day, it is what it is. So we're going to move on to the next character. Next character we're going to talk about is the Magician Basil Hawkins, the Cursed Executioner. Now, when this guy came out, he actually saw a lot of play and was very, very good. But nowadays, unfortunately, it is what it is. So he is a Cerebral Striker and he is a Strength unit, which is very, very good. All 3 of those are excellent classes. Strikers are about mid, but I mean, it's better than something like Shooters, right? His Sailor abilities, he boosts the attack of Cerebral characters by 75, and then he adds 2 times his attack in additional damage when he taps a perfect. So with his special is really interesting. He has 3 stages. Stage 1 is 9 turns, Stage 2 is 12, and Stage 3 is 15. What he'll do on his Stage 3 is he cuts one enemy's HP by 20%, changes T&D and empty and badly orbs into matching orbs, and if your captain is a Cerebral, he will completely remove paralysis. Now that is very, very strong. Completely removing paralysis, that means like if you have like a 99 turn paralysis, gone. Hawkins will remove it as long as you have a Cerebral captain. Cerebrals are running riot at the moment, especially on OPTC Global, so having a Cerebral captain is really not that hard to do. The downside to this unit is it's very rare that you need more than like 5 or 10 turns of paralysis removal, and fitting this guy onto a team just for paralysis removal is kind of, it is what it is, I guess. Normally when you're bringing a paralysis removal, say someone like Don Krieg and Jin, they're removing 5 turns of paralysis and then giving you a 2 times orb boost. So that's the big downside to this unit. Besides the paralysis removal, he sort of doesn't do too much else. I mean, he does have fairly decent orb manipulation, and he has a nice little HP cut, but I mean, you could argue that you could just use his Stage 2 special at 11 turns or 12 turns, depending if you have limit breaked him. That way you can just get the 5 turns of paralysis, but then you just raise the argument that there are just a lot of good rare recruits that just do what he does, but better. He does have 2 potential abilities of Enrage and no healing reduction, so that is fairly nice as well. But all in all, when this guy first came out, he was basically essential for some pieces of content, especially like the zero stamina challenges. And look, having this guy in your box is never going to go to waste, because again, he is very niche, and if you ever need like a lot of paralysis reduction, he's going to be your go-to. The last character we're going to talk about in the B tier is Master Caesar, False God of Salvation. Now, whoop, he's gone. Come back, Master Caesar. There he is. So this guy here is probably the best out of all of the characters in the B list, and will probably see the most play. But again, it's still very niche. That's the thing about these limited rare recruits. They are very niche. And besides S tier, you're kind of only bringing them to purely beat the content that their special is designed to beat, I guess is the best way to put it. So this guy is a cerebral slasher, and he's an int unit, so very, very strong classes at the moment, especially with Roger and Odin running around. He has 2 sailor abilities that boost the attack, HP, and recovery of cerebral characters by 75, and he makes int orbs beneficial to cerebral characters, so very, very good sailor abilities. With his special, it goes down to 13 turns on limit break. He's going to completely remove poison, which is very, very good. He reduces bind and chain multiplier limit duration by 7 turns, which is excellent. And then he adds 0.5 to the chain multiplier for 1 turn. If during that turn you score 3 perfect hits, he's then going to add 1.1 times chain multiplier for 1 turn. So 1.1 times to the chain multiplier is the strongest chain multiplier buff in the game. Him and Legend Cracker are the only 2 units that have this. And for a team like a Sugar team, this is actually going to see some fair decent play. The downside to that is it's very sort of big brain in terms of how you want to use this. And because it's like a carryover effect on a 13 turn cooldown, you really need to get his special on stage 4 if you're using him in short content. But needless to say, 1.1 times chain boost is very, very strong. It's just, at the end of the day, when you're running content and you don't really need that 1.1 times boost, it's not really essential to have. In saying that though, he could be very good for something like Kazuna. I've actually got him on one of my Kazuna teams at the moment for a Sugar team, just to get that extra 1.1 times boost to the chain multiplier. But unless you're really utilizing the chain or the chain multiplier limit reduction, otherwise just bringing this unit is sort of, it's just like an wasted spot on your team, especially with the amount of debuffs and stuff that you get through Colosseums and raids and stuff nowadays. He just doesn't seem to find his way onto teams too easily. He does have 2 potential abilities that have critical hit and slot bind reduction. Both of those are very, very good. And with his sailor abilities, he does have some very, very good utility. Not saying that this unit is bad, definitely not saying this unit's bad, but the reason I have him in the B tier is just purely finding a spot for him on a team can be very tricky. And because of that, I do find that he does drop a little bit on the list. Okay, so that was the B tier, so let's move up to the A tier now. So in the A tier, this is where characters start to see a little bit more play, as there aren't a lot of units that sort of can do what they do. I mean, there still are, and they still are replaced by a lot of legends and stuff like that, but at least with these units, they do stuff that other units, well, not a lot of other units can do. So we do have Pudding, we have Vivi, Tashigi, Sanji and Pudding, the dual unit, and we have Koala. So these units are fairly decent, and you can fit them on a lot of categories, but again, the downside to them and the reason they're not in the S tier is they can still be replaced. The thing about the S tier is there's a lot of characters in there that sort of aren't replaced by other units. I mean, they are, but they are still very segregated to that team that they're on, I guess is the best way to put it. So let's hop over to the database now and let's see what these guys can do. So the first unit we're going to talk about is Tashigi. So Tashigi is very, very good. She's a cerebral slasher and she's a Psy unit. All 3 of those tags are very, very strong. She has 2 sailor abilities, which she boosts the attack, HP, and recovery of slasher characters by 50, and she makes Psy orbs beneficial for slasher characters. Excellent, excellent sailor abilities. Very, very strong. Her special goes down to 11 turns, where she reduces the attack down and increased damage taking duration by 5 turns. She changes block, strengthened, quick orbs into matching orbs, and then she locks the chain multiplier at 2.75 for 3 turns. Now her special is very, very good. It can still see a lot of play. Reducing attack down by 5 turns is excellent, but increased damage taking sort of doesn't exist anymore with the update of the limit break mechanic. But she has very good orb manipulation. She changes block, strength, and quick orbs into matching, and then she locks the chain multiplier at 2.75 for 3 turns. Locking the chain multiplier at 2.75 for 3 turns is very, very strong, as that can be carried into another room. Now, the downside to her, and the reason I don't have her in S tier, is because she locks the chain multiplier at 2.75, it's not exactly super strong. So you could always be utilized, if you need to run that mechanic and you have someone like Shanks Crew or bring your friend Shanks Crew, he can just do this but does it better. And then even with the character like the free-to-play Big Mom that came out with the summertime batch, she also does this but has different utility. The big upside to this Tashigi is she removes attack down by 5 turns, and she does have some orb manipulation, but it's very rare that you need the attack down and the orb manipulation in one go, but there are instances where you need that, and this Tashigi can definitely fit in to a lot of teams, being a slasher and cerebral unit. Also being a psi unit as well is very, very strong. Her limit break material abilities are critical hit and cooldown reduction. So she actually starts with a 10-turn cooldown, so you can actually have her special at the start of the fight. Another really, really strong thing about this unit is she has a very good support ability. She goes onto Smoker and Zoro, and at level 5, when an enemy inflicts you with attack down, she reduces that by 2 turns and changes strength and quick orbs into matching. So the big upside to this unit is actually having her support. Zoro, there's a lot of good Zoros in the game, especially someone like Clash Zoro, and removing the 2 turns of attack down is very, very strong. So this Tashigi is very, very good. I would have her in the S tier if that chain lock was a little bit higher, but just nowadays there are units that just sort of do that better, and then there are other utility subs that sort of give that attack down removal as well as giving you guys another buff. So it's not that the Tashigi's bad, it's just that there's other units that just do what she does but better, and that's really the big thing about this tier list, is that the S characters there isn't a lot of units that you would just pick over them, and that's really why Tashigi sort of falls down the list. The next unit we're going to talk about is Vivi, the Princess's Resolve. So this unit is a free spirit slasher. She's also a quick typing. She has 2 sailor abilities, which reduces silence by 1 turn, and I'm pretty sure that is on your entire crew. So that's really, really strong. Anyone that reduces paralysis or special bind or anything like that for 1 turn on your entire crew is always going to see a lot of play. She also makes recovery orbs beneficial for all characters, which is very, very strong. And her special goes down to 11 turns, where she reduces the cooldown of all characters by 1 turn, changes block and adjacent orbs into recovery, which then therefore she makes matching. And if during that turn you hit 2 perfect, she's then going to lock the chain multiplier at 3 times for 3 turns. Oh, words. So her special is very, very good. Getting 3 turns of 3 times chain lock is very, very strong, but she kind of falls into that same category of, I need the chain lock now, and I need the orb manipulation now. So she can still see play, but the problem with her is if you need the chain lock and the block orb manipulation on the same turn, you're not going to get it, unfortunately. But having that chain lock for the next following 3 stages is still going to be very, very strong. She has 2 limit break abilities, where she has the reduce no healing by 10 turns, and she also has reduced slot bind duration by 10 turns as well. Oh, the no healing's 5 turns, sorry. She has a support, but it is only stats, unfortunately. But the downside to this unit, as I mentioned, is not being able to get her full special in a single turn. Now, that could see some play, and could be very, very useful, but again, it just falls into that category of this character is very niche, and if you do need all of that manipulation straight away, you're just unfortunately not going to get it. So again, very, very good, but there are units that just do what she does but better. The next unit that we're going to talk about is Koala. So Koala is a fighter cerebral quick type. This unit, when she first came out, was an absolute god, mainly because Lucy was just running absolute riot on OPTC Global, and even Japan when he first came out. Lucy was just an absolute god. So this unit has 2 sailor abilities. She boosts her own base attack by 250 if she's the last attacker in the chain, and she makes quick orbs beneficial to fighter characters. Very, very strong sailor abilities. Very, very strong. Her special does 20 times her attack and quick damage to one enemy, and if the enemies have all debuff protection or delay debuff protection at the time, she amplifies the effects of fighter characters' orbs by 2 times for 1 turn. She's then going to change all orbs, including block orbs, on fighter characters into matching orbs at a 12-turn cooldown. So not only does she give a 2 times orb boost, but she actually gives you a full board of orbs through block orbs. This mechanic is beautiful. I love this so much. Changing orbs to matching and then giving you an orb boost is just god tier, especially when it goes through block orbs. It's just excellent. The only downside to this unit is she only boosts fighters. 2 times orb boost for fighter characters. Now, you can still easily use that on a non-fighter team and not have a full buff because it is quite strong. But the downside is, like, if you really want that full potential, you really want to be bringing fighters. And because of that, there just are other units nowadays that do it better, especially with characters like V2 Snake Man out running around, Roger just using his super typing. There are just a lot of units that can just do this, but better for stronger teams. She has 2 potential abilities, which are critical hit and Enrage, where she boosts her base attack by 200, and she has a 70% chance of doing 8% more damage. She goes on fighter characters for a stat boost on her Sailor ability, and yeah, this koala is very, very good. It's just, nowadays, fighters just aren't there, I guess, and there's no real, like, they're very similar to Slashers. Like, there's a lot of very, very good fighter characters, but the fighter team is just not there yet, so it is what it is, unfortunately, and this koala may see a resurgence later down the track, and she's still usable. But there are, again, the problem with this AT is there are just characters that do what she does, but better. So the next unit we're going to talk about is Sanji and Pudding, the dual unit, limited rare recruit dual unit. I'm pretty sure this guy came out on a Kizuna Clash, I'm pretty sure. And like that was the only way to get them, and then they released them later. But this character is actually fairly decent. They're a powerhouse fighter or a shooter cerebral, depending if you are Sanji or if you are Pudding. If you are the Sanji, you get attack of strength, dex, and quick characters by 2.5 and increase their recovery by 1.2 and boost the chancing of getting recovery orbs. And then for Pudding, same thing, strength, dex, quick 2.5 times and boost their recovery by 1.25 and makes recovery orbs matching. So the idea is you just want one of each whenever you're using these guys. Now the big upside to these guys is they have a very good captain ability when you are in their dual form. 4.25 to strength, dex, and quick is very, very strong. And their recovery by 1.75 boosts the chance of getting recovery orbs and makes them matching. So very, very strong captain ability, and they were actually a GOAT tier for stuff like Kizuna when they first came out. I do remember using them on a Kizuna as they were boosted as well. So this unit can still see play as a captain, but again, 2.5 when you're not in their dual form is just, it's very, very low. Their Sailor abilities, they boost the attack of characters in the top row by 60, which is pretty cool, and makes recovery orbs beneficial for all characters. Now that is very, very strong. Their switch ability randomizes sign into orbs on strength, dex, and quick characters into either recovery, TND, strength, dex, or quick. And remember, as a captain, they increase the chance of landing on those recovery orbs, so that is very, very strong. Their cooldown goes down to 12 turns with Limit Break, and their special is going to change adjacent orbs into recovery orbs, reduces any damage received over 3,000 by 97% for 2 turns, reduces enemies' threshold duration by 5 turns, and then boosts the color affinity of strength, dex, and quick characters by 1.75 for 2 turns, and becomes Sanji and Pudding for 2 turns. So, very, very good special ability, actually. Very, very strong. You've got very good tankiness in terms of getting recovery orbs, taking less damage over 3,000, and then actually reducing threshold by 5 turns as well. So that's very, very good. The downside to all of this is the 2-turn tag. So they also boost up color affinity of strength, dex, and quick characters by 1.75 for 2 turns. The downside is the 2 turns. If this unit was 3 turns for all of that, they would just be significantly better. If you could carry their captain ability into the next stage, use it on stage 4, go into stage 5, and then have 3 turns of color affinity, 3 turns of the threshold reduction, it would just be so much better. Unfortunately for that, you just can't get that 4.25 times captain ability for very, very long. And because of that, I just had to bump them down because color affinity is just not a buff that you will always go to in most pieces of content. For stuff like Kizuna, of course, you're always looking for good color affinity boosters. But 1.75 is a little bit low. I would have much preferred if it was 1.75 for 3 turns or something like 2 times for 1 turn. That would have made this character significantly better and would have seen a lot more play. They have 2 potential abilities where they reduce no healing by 5 turns and slot bind on themselves for 5 turns. So, not a bad unit, especially for a dual unit. But another downside to this unit is with the Legend Sanji Pudding that will be coming out, this character is just going to be straight up replaced. Not that it's bad, it's just that if you ever pull that Sanji Pudding Legend, like, it's going to be the character you're running over this one. Trust me, that character is absolutely insane. The final character on the A tier is Pudding, the driven shooter psi type that is Pudding. So, Pudding is... Oh, there we go. I was like, why aren't we going down? Pudding's Sailor ability reduces silence on herself by 5 turns and makes psi orbs beneficial for driven characters. Very, very good. Her special goes down to 13 turns on cooldown with Limit Break. And she reduces silence duration by 5 turns. So not only does she remove the duration of 5 turns on herself, she then can remove Special Bind on your entire crew by 5 turns as well. She reduces Rainbow Shield and Resilience buff by 5 turns and changes block and badly matching orbs into G orbs. If there are 6 driven characters on the crew when the special is activated, she's going to change Strength, Dex, Quick, Psi in orbs into matching and recovers 5,000 HP at the end of the 3 turns. Not a bad special ability. She's got fairly decent utility with a good orb manipulation. The big upside to this unit is the reducing the silence for 5 turns. That's really the big reason you want to use this character. Any unit that can remove the silence on themselves and then once again remove it on your characters is very, very strong. That's the big downside to some units, is like, oh, they have 5 turns of special bind removal. That's great, but they only remove it on themselves for 2 turns. So what's the point? I'm looking at you, VV Becca. VV Viola. But Rebecca Viola, holy moly words. But in saying that, she isn't terrible. But again, there's just characters that can do what she does, but just better. And she's really not going to see too much play, as she's basically built around the Driven tag. But if you just need someone to remove those 5 turns of special bind and give you a full board of G-Orbs, I guess that you could definitely put her on a team. Now, she does have 2 potential abilities where she has Barrier Pen and Int Damage Reduction. So besides Barrier Pen, she doesn't really have too great of a limit break. But in saying that, special bind reducers are always very, I guess they're very rare, I guess. There's not too many of them in the game that sort of do what she can do with the whole crewmate ability as well. So pudding is fairly good, but I mean, she's not essential. So that was the A category. As I mentioned, these units are still very, very good, but they are just easily replaced with other units that are a lot more accessible. The downside to the limited rare recruits are they are quite hard to get your hands on, and especially with most free-to-play players and most players summoning on Sugo banners, that's really where you want to be spending your gems. But in saying that, with the new update that has come out, there are a lot of very good limited rare recruits that are popping up on things like the Kazuna banners, and I imagine they'll be popping up on the treasure map banners as well. So that's a big reason why I'm making this list as well for you guys, just so you guys know which units that you guys pull on those banners if you are summoning, which ones that you want to sort of level up and which ones are fairly decent. So we're going to move on to the S tier now, and the best thing about the S tier is that 3 of these units, I'm pretty sure, are actually accessible on the Alvita banner that is floating around on that was just floating around on OPTC Global. It may still be out, I'm not sure when this video is going up, but let's move up to the S tier now. And in the S tier, we have Sogeking, we have Kinemon, we have Lucy, we have Pedro, and we have Bonnie. Finally, we have this Sengoku as well. So this Sengoku here, he is not actually on OPTC Global at the moment, but he will be. He's the next unit that we expect to be getting on OPTC Global, and he's very, very good. So I do want to talk about him as well. All 6 of these units are exceptionally strong, especially the red units that you see there. Bonnie, Lucy, and Sengoku are arguably the best limited rare recruits in the game, not counting the Kazuna rare recruits and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I'm not talking about them here. We may do a tier list on them moving forward as more of them pop up. But the other 3 probably are replaceable, but they are still very, very good. Now, Bonnie, Lucy, and Sengoku are all sort of irreplaceable on their particular teams. So that's why they've made the S tier. And for the other 3 units, they kind of like, they're just so damn good. I just sort of had to put them here, but we'll talk about them. So let's hop over to the database once again, and let's start with the slashers. Pedro of the Treetops, the former Nox Pirates captain. This guy is a Slasher Cerebral and is a Dex typing. So Slash and Cerebral, very, very good classes. His Sailor abilities, if this character has a Dex Orbs and hits a perfect, he will keep that Dex Orb for the next turn. And then he has a Sailor ability, which makes Dex Orbs beneficial for Slasher characters. Very, very strong. Any Sailor ability that gives you a matching Orbs for your characters is always going to see play. Always. And the fact it's for Slashers, as I mentioned with Koala, Slashers have a lot of very, very strong units and are low-key creeping up to probably being the best class in the game. And it's very easy to see that with something like Pirate Rumble, how they're sort of just destroying the meta at the moment. But the Slasher team itself doesn't really exist. It's kind of like a rainbow team, like Odin, Roger, Shanks crew. They're all rainbow leaders, so you're not really running a full Slasher team, even though the team is built up around Slashers. Now, this guy's special goes down to 13 turns, and what he does is he cuts the current HP of one enemy by 10%, reduces the defense of all enemies by 100% for 1 turn, and if the crew has 5 or more Slashers at the time the special is activated, boosts the attack against enemies with reduced defense by 2 times for 1 turn, and then it changes adjacent orbs into matching orbs. This guy does so much, especially if you have the 5 slashes. If you're running something like a Shanks crew team, if you're running something like a Roger team, and you've got Odin and Shanks crew on the team, it's very, very easy to have 5 slashes. So not only does this guy reduce the defense by 100%, but he procs his own condition, and versing defense down, especially at 100%, is easily... actually, besides maybe Mihawk Baron's conditional, but that is easily the best of the conditional boosts. Against defense down, you are not only dealing more damage, but the condition is giving you more damage, and therefore they are taking more damage. This guy is a monster. Not only that, but he gives you some matching orbs too, which is great. And if you're running something like Shanks crew as a sub as well, you can just switch with Shanks crew, give yourself a full board of orbs, have a 1.5 times attack boost, conditional boost against defense down, use the Shanks crew special, get 3.5 times chain lock. Like, you can just do so much with 2 units. And then you've got Roger as your captain, you can bring Odin as a friend captain, you've got an orb boost, you've got an attack boost. Like, you have so much going on the slasher team right now, and it's crazy. It's actually crazy. He has 2 limit break abilities, which he has critical hit, 70% at 8% extra damage if you hit a perfect, and then he has damage reduction from quick units. So this guy, I was kind of tossing and turning whether to put him in the S tier, but with the release of Roger and Odin, it just kind of became a no-brainer for me, just thinking about like the teams that I like to run and what units have that slasher tag. If you have this guy and you can proc the condition of defense down, it is amazing. Like, it is amazing what this guy can do. Now, you can argue, I get it, like V3 Akainu is out at the moment and he can do that. But look, V3 Akainu hasn't been out for very, very long and he is still a Sugo Fest tier. And I guess Sugos are probably more accessible as you guys are pulling for more of them. But Akainu doesn't give you matching orbs. Akainu does give you an attack boost, which is great. But Akainu doesn't fit on every single team that you are going to be running him on. Especially if you do need to be running slashes for whatever reason as well. This guy is going to be your go-to. So besides Akainu, like, there's really no one else that can do what this guy can do. Being 100% reduction is just incredible. And then a 2 times conditional boost as well. Pedro he is really, really strong. After talking about Pedro, I do want to talk about Kinemon straight after that. Now, this was another unit that I was tossing and turning once again whether to put him in S tier or A tier. And the reason I put him in the S tier is purely because, again, he has the slasher tag. Also, this unit is a super type procer for the new Kazuki Odin that just released on both versions of the game. And because of that, purely because of that Odin, that's the big reason I've put him in S tier, to be honest. He is still very, very good, don't get me wrong, but because he is proccing Odin's condition, that is a really, really big reason why I put him up in the top category. I understand Roger is probably like better for Odin teams to be proccing the condition, but I mean, if you're running Roger as a sub, like, why are you not running him as a captain? Like, straight up. But it is what it is. So this guy is a slasher free spirit. He is also a quick typing. He deals 50 times his attack in quick damage to all enemies and reduces crew's chain multiplier limit and chain coefficient reduction by 7 turns. Now, that is very, very strong. The thing about this is removing the chain multiplier limit. That is the big one. And 7 turns is awesome. Anything over 5 is always going to see play. That is very, very strong. And if your captain is a slasher character, only if he's a slasher character, so it doesn't have to be a full team of slashers, very not like Pedro, boost the color affinity of slasher characters by 2 times for 1 turn. On a 13 turn cooldown, that is very, very strong. Now, like I mentioned, color affinity is a bit hit or miss, but because this guy can trigger the super typing of Odin, he is going to see a lot of play on Odin teams or on Odin slasher teams if you guys don't have your hands on Roger. So, not saying that this guy's the best in the S tier. Honestly, he's probably like the lowest. Him and Solga King are probably the lowest on this list. But purely because of the introduction of Odin and Roger, I just had to put him in S tier. Having a team with, say Odin and Roger as your leaders, you have Shanks crew, you have Pedro, and then you have Kinemon, or you're running 2 Rogers with an Odin sub, Shanks crew, Kinemon, and this. And Pedro, your team is going to be absolutely set. His Sailor abilities boost the attack of slasher characters by 50, and then makes quick orbs beneficial to slasher characters as well. So with him and Pedro, you've got quick, you've got Dex, and they're all matching. You've got conditional boosts, you've got color affinity boost, you've got attack boost, you've got chain locks with Shanks crew. That little slasher team can just do so much. The potential abilities he has is strength damage reduction and critical hit at 90%, dealing 8% extra damage. And then his support is just for slashes. So I'm not saying this Kinemon is amazing, and he is probably replaceable. Like, I mean, to me, he's sort of like the new Rare Recruit Rayleigh for Odin, I guess. So like that new Rare Recruit Rayleigh works just so damn well with Roger, where this Rare Recruit or Limited Rare Recruit Kinemon just works so well with Odin. So this guy will see lots and lots of play, especially if you need a color affinity boost of 2 slashing units. But yeah, the slashes, they've sort of just crept up without anyone knowing, and I low-key love it. On to the next unit we're going to talk about now. It is Saga King, the hero from Sniper Island. This guy is just a shooter. He is a quick typing, and honestly, he's very good. He's a weird one. When he came out, he was guaranteed on his banner, and I thought, screw it, I'll pick him up. And I've actually used him quite a bit since. He has 2 Sailor abilities where he boosts the attack, HP, and recovery of quick units by 40 and completely removes blindness. What that means is the remove sound effects debuff completely removes it. I love that crewmate ability. I absolutely adore that crewmate ability. I hate that debuff so damn much, but I can never justify bringing a unit to get rid of it, unless it's like Invinclave, because they just do so much. But having a crewmate ability just to remove that is god tier. He's special on a 13 turn cooldown after limit break. He's going to do 150,000 fixed damage to all enemies. He reduces % damage reduction, which is the Rainbow Shield, and paralysis by 3 turns. So the downside to this sort of utility is I'm a bigger fan of having like Bind and Despair utility, or like Rainbow Shield and Blue Shield reduction, like where it's kind of similar and you can just sort of chuck that unit on to remove both of them. But in niche pieces of content where they have paralysis and % damage reduction, this guy is going to shine. The downside as well is it is only 3 turns, which is kind of hit or miss, but again, you're really only running this unit purely for this next part of his special. On the second part of his special, he's going to amplify the effect of orbs on quick and Psi units by 1.75, and if the crew has 5 or more quick or Psi units and hits 4 perfects, he's going to amplify the effects by 2.25 in the following turn. That is incredibly strong. 2 turns of an orb boost for quick and Psi units at 2.25 that you can carry into a following room. Incredibly strong. Really, really strong. If you partner him up with like the new Rare Recruit Bonnie and making a mono blue team, you can have 2 turns of attack boosting and orb boosting, and Sugar can be running riot. It can just work so damn well. And the fact that he has that Lucy effect of carrying it into another room, it makes him so good. Like so good. Unfortunately, it is only for quick and Psi units, and you do have to build your team around that. But with like Garbs challenges and stuff like that, where you have to run mono blue, this guy can be an absolute god on content like that. He has 2 limit break abilities, Barrier Pen and Enrage. Enrage is at 120 extra attack, and he will completely ignore barriers as long as your HP is 50% or above. Barrier Pen has just got a huge upgrade on OPTC, as it does trigger removing the barrier and going through the barrier at the same time. So anyone that has Barrier Pen just got an absolute monstrous buff, and the fact that this guy is an Usopp character makes him so much better, because there aren't a huge amount of Usopps in the game. So running this guy as your dedicated orb booster, as well as getting a nice little bit of utility as well, can see a crazy amount of play. Unfortunately, his utility isn't great, but I just had to put him in the S tier purely for that extra that amazing orb boost that he does over 2 turns. For stuff like Garb challenges, this guy is going to be an absolute god, and he will see quite a lot of play moving forward. He is an Usopp unit as well, so he does have he is accessible to a lot of very, very good supports as well. On to the big 3 now. Let's start with Bonnie. Bonnie the Big Eater, captured Supernova by Blackbeard. This artwork too, by the way, boys, like, mates, if you, oh my god, Bonnie, you're just so sexy. But amazing part in the anime and the manga. And when this unit first came out, and still is absolute god. This chick came out around the time that Lace was running riot, and you'll see that in her special. But moving on from Lace now, we do have this guy called Goldie Roger, and Bonnie just works exceptionally with Goldie Roger, like exceptionally. So she's a free spirit and fighter. She's also a strength unit, which is very, very good. Her Sailor abilities, she reduces silence on herself by 3 turns and makes recovery orbs beneficial for all characters. Excellent, excellent Sailor abilities. Her special is a 2-stage special. Stage 1 is at 6 turns, where she reduces bind and paralysis by 3 turns and changes block and bomb orbs into recovery orbs, and if your captain is a free spirit, she reduces recovery down and blindness by 5 turns. Very, very good at a 6-turn cooldown or 5-turn cooldown with limit break. On her stage 2, though, she goes down to 12 turns. She reduces bind and paralysis by 10 turns. Massive. The only thing that's missing there is despair, and the reason they didn't add despair to this unit is because when you use lace, you just switch to lace and it gets rid of despair. But with a guy named Goldie Roger running around who's just completely immune to despair, you have the big 3 in 2 units. Goldie Roger's removing the despair, Bonnie's removing the blind and paralysis by 10 turns, man. Like, there's not much content that you need more than 10 turns of that. She then recovers 50 times her recovery in HP. She changes block and bomb orbs into recovery, which, remember, she makes matching as well. And if the captain is a free spirit character, she reduces recovery down, silence, and blindness by 5 turns. She just does everything. Everything. Besides despair, obviously, but if you're partnering her up with Goldie Roger or someone that can remove despair, even someone like Saba Koala, when you switch with them, they remove despair too. It's just god tier, like absolute god tier. She's an absolute god of a sub, and she's still going to see a lot of play moving forward as free spirits are just absolutely insane. She has reduced no healing reduction and pinch healing. She reduces the no healing by 5 turns, and if your HP is below 30%, she recovers 1.5 times her recovery every time you hit a perfect. So she is very, very good, and ever since I pulled this unit, I basically run her on any team that I can possibly fit her on. If I'm running a free spirit team and it's based around strength, someone like V2 Snake Man, V1 Snake Man, all of those units in GARPS challenges, she just gets it done so damn well, and she's actually available on that Alvita banner, so hopefully you guys went to the 2 multis. I would have highly recommended that. Hopefully I can get this out before the banner goes away. I might drop it just before it goes away, just for you guys, so if you do decide to pull, I would definitely throw 2 multis at that, just to see if you can get your hands on this girl or the next unit that we are about to talk about. So the next unit we're about to talk about is Lucy, the Corradia Coliseum Final Round Battle Royale. Right before this man gets his devil fruit, no spoilers, but he is an absolute monster of a limited rare recruit. He's a striker free spirit, and he's also a strength unit. The big upside to this character, he is V2 Snake Man's best friend. No question about it. Him or Saba Koala, actually. Saba Koala is very, very good too. But this guy here was sort of released around Mihawk Perona's release. He works very, very well with them as well. But let's check out what this guy does. So his special goes down to 13 turns, and he has 2 sailor abilities. He removes silence on himself by 5 turns, and makes T&D orbs beneficial for strength and psi characters. So 2 different colors he is giving a matching orb to. T&D orbs, just matching orbs all the time as a sailor is exceptional. He actually has quite a decent captain ability. He's a 3 times attack booster for strength and psi units, and then if you hit 3 perfects, he goes up to 3.25. It's usable for stuff like treasure map and whatever, but you're not really running him as a captain. At 13 turn cooldown, he reduces bind and silence duration by 5 turns. So very similar to the pudding, he reduces 5 turns of silence on himself and then does 5 turns for your crew, as well as removing bind by 5 turns as well, which is great. He then reduces burn duration by 10 turns. He's one of the only units in the game that does this much burn removal, and if you need that 10 turn of burn removal, he's a goat. He's an absolute goat. I find bringing a chain locker is a good way to get around burn as well, that we don't have to hit your perfects. You are still losing a little bit of damage, but like if it's a big burn removal, you don't have to sort of dedicate a unit to remove it. But with this guy, if there's burn removal and I'm running like a majority strength or psi team, this guy is my go-to. Basically, because not only does he have great utility, he has great orb manipulation as well. Block, bomb, quick orbs, he turns to matching orbs. And if your crew has 4 or more strength or psi units, he is a 2.25 times attack booster for 1 turn. 2 separate colors, 2.25 times attack. That is god tier. Absolutely monstrous. And especially for someone like V2 Snake Man, where V2 Snake Man is an orb booster, he will then be the dedicated attack booster, as well as triggering the attack boosting super type that Luffy provides as well. So you can have 2 attack boosters, you can get the super typing, you can just do so much with this guy on a Snake Man team. V2 Snake Man is still one of the best captains running around, so having this guy is absolute god tier. He has 2 potential abilities, which is critical hit and dex damage reduction. If with his critical hit, he has a 70% chance to deal 8% of his attack. But basically with this guy here, he is just an absolute monster. His downside is his name is Sabo still, even though he is a Lucy unit. But in saying that, he can access some of the best supports in the game, stuff like Halloween Ace, stuff like Koalas. He is very, very good, and he is on the Alvida banner as well. So that is a big reason I would throw at least 2 multis at the banner. Alvida's pretty good herself as well, being a Kizuna rare recruit. But for this guy and Bonnie, absolute gods. Absolute gods. I run them all the time. The final unit we're going to talk about is Sengoku. Now, Sengoku is not out on OPTC Global, but he is definitely top 3 in rare recruits as well, or limited rare recruits, up there with Bonnie and Lucy. So he's a fighter cerebral and he's a strength typing. I think you're seeing the trend that the strength class is very, very strong. His sailor abilities boost the attack of fighter and cerebrals by 75, and he makes dex and quick orbs beneficial for himself. He goes down to a 14 turn cooldown, and he has the sailor despair duration, which is very, very good. So that's the where like you lock their crewmate abilities, which is 5 turns, which is very, very rare. And he also has critical hit at 80% for 7% of his extra damage. His special reduces bind, silence, and attack down by 6 turns. Very, very strong. And changes block and badly matching orbs into matching orbs. Now, the downside to this character is he doesn't actually... he doesn't have the silence removal on himself. So it's only really good if like other characters get the bind, like the special bind, but he does remove bind and attack down by 6 turns as well, which is very, very good. He has very, very good orb manipulation, changing block and badly matching orbs into matching orbs. And if the captain is a fighter or cerebral character, he's then going to amplify the effects of orbs for fighter and cerebrals by 2.25 times. Massive. Absolutely massive. Now, you're really only going to see play with this on sort of cerebral teams, but as I mentioned with slashers, fighters are low-key one of like the best classes in the game, even though fighter characters aren't sort of the pinnacle of the tier list. So this character is an absolute god, and I can't wait for him to come out on OPTC Global. I will definitely be picking him up. Hopefully he's like guaranteed on 5 multis, very similar to something like Lucy. And if he is, I would highly, highly recommend you guys picking this guy up. So let's go back to the tier list now and let's have a look. So that was my S tier there. Sogeking, Kinemon, Lucy, Bonnie, Pedro, and Sengoku. The best limited rare recruits going around on OPTC at the moment. The A tier, still very, very good. If you do get your hands on these units, definitely worth leveling up, but you may not sort of see play for quite a while, except for most niche content. This Toshigi, you could probably argue, is an S tier unit purely for her support ability, but again, I just sort of look at usability and how often I use these units, and that S tier, I'm always at least using them for something. Sogeking I'm using a lot in GARPS challenges, Kinemon and Pedro I'm using a lot on the slasher teams, and Lucy and Bonnie I'm using whenever I see that debuff pop up that they can remove. I'm always using them. As for the rest of the units, unfortunately, they have dropped off quite a lot. And if you do pick up any of these units, I mean, they're great for collector's items. And once upon a time, they were very, very good. I used to love this Ben Beckman. I used to love this Gecko Moria. I used to love this Leo. So hopefully you guys can still find some use for those units. But that's it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And if you did, make sure to hit that like button. If you want to stay up to date with more OPTC content I post, hit that big red subscribe button too. But guys, most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. I thank you guys for watching as always, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye!